Hey, seventh grade. Today we're going to continue our looking at the addition of new states. And today we're going to look to the southern part of the country and look at southern expansion after the adoption of the Constitution. So, the U.S. quickly brought on board Kentucky and Tennessee in 1792 and 1796, as the population in both of these territories was increasing very rapidly. Fun fact, Tennessee's name was almost Franklin. Definitely would have been a lot easier to spell, just saying. But cheesy pickup lines would never have one of their best lines. Anyway, Louisiana Purchase with President Jefferson 1803 secures the ever important territory or city of New Orleans at the mouth of the Mississippi River, which was a huge priority for the United States to obtain control over. And because that city was so important, they wanted to make the territory around it, originally called the Orleans Territory, part of the U.S. So it's expedited in 1812, right before the start of the war. It becomes part of the Union, giving it a lot more legitimacy and protection as being part officially of the U.S. and not just a territory. But now, because New Orleans was a huge part of the desire of the U.S. To get in their control and keep under their control, they're hoping to extend the U.S. territory along the Gulf Coast all the way up to Louisiana. And to this end, they wanted to start taking control of that area. That area is mostly today consisting of the states of Alabama and Mississippi. It also contains some parts of western Florida known as the Panhandle. In 1798, this territory is claimed by the U.S. and called the Mississippi Territory, after the river, which is named after a Native American tribe that lived in the area. Eventually, this territory will be split in two, and in the early 1800s, both of them will also become states. One of the reasons why it was split in two was because, well, one of the high priorities for the South is to maintain a balance in slave states within the Congress. So by adding two new states, it increases the number of members of the House of Representatives and the Senate who will be voting along pro-state lines and standing against any abolition laws that could be coming from the North. And we're going to see that slavery is going to play a huge role in the lives and the settlement of these two states of Mississippi and Alabama, as they're going to become the center of the Deep South and the, quote, Cotton Kingdom, where we're going to see a large amount of the cotton plantations that will be built that will be part of supporting the southern economy after the invention of the cotton gin. But the real after getting New Orleans under their control, the real gem that they wanted to get was Florida. Florida strategically is really important, as it is a peninsula that juts into both the Gulf of Mexico, the Caribbean Sea, and the Atlantic Ocean. Controlling it gives the U.S. a good amount of military power and the ability to defend itself. But also, before it became under control, this was an area that was kind of, quote, lawless. Because the Spanish, even though they owned it, they didn't really have a lot of government there. They kind of left it to its own. And this left a vacuum. The Native Americans in Florida, who had not had to contend against the Spanish, were very powerful and were a formidable force against the U.S., including the Seminole tribe, which is going to wage multiple wars against the U.S. under the leadership of General Andrew Jackson. He keeps coming up. And on top of it, it was a place where many runaway slaves would escape to. A territory in the South that was outside the U.S. control was an ideal and easier place for people to flee to on the Underground Railroad rather than trying to flee all the way into northern states like Pennsylvania or even into Canada. And the southern states, which protecting the institution of slavery is one of their number one priorities, wanted to take that away as an option for runaway slaves. Lastly, British spies were using this as a launching place to gather information on the United States. Britain always raising its head as a threat to the country during these years. But then, during the wars with the Seminole tribes, at this point in parts of Georgia and Alabama, Andrew Jackson takes it upon himself, without the orders of the president or Congress, and marches into Spanish territory and starts taking control of Spanish forts. Essentially, the U.S. military suddenly now becomes the number one military power in the territory of Florida, without our government authorizing it. But, able to sense an opportunity, President Monroe says, hey, listen, you're going to have to send an army out to now get our army. Why don't you agree to sell it to us? And he gets his Secretary of State, John Quincy Adams, to form the Adams-Onis Treaty, which finally gives us Florida and gives the United States control of the Gulf Coast from the Mississippi River to the Florida Keys. One of my favorite places. So what I'd like you to do, since slavery kept getting brought up in regards to the southern states and them becoming and joining the Union, I'd like you to make a prediction based on this lesson on how you think the issue of slavery may affect the addition of more new states to the Union as America continued to expand. A prediction question. How fun. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thanks for watching and doing such great work in advance. See you tomorrow.